All right, hey guys, what's going on? This is the Eric Barber here. I am at the Monroe Pop Fest. I am joined by comic legend Bill Morrison. How are we doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And from my understanding, you started out in the comic realm from doing Disney.
Actually, the stuff I did for Disney was movie posters.
Oh, okay.
Primarily, I did a lot of different things, but movie posters were the main thing.
Sure.
And then my first work in comics was with the Simpsons.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and so you were on the hit comic The Simpsons, right? How did that really come, like the opportunity come for you?
Well, I when I first went to Hollywood, I worked at an ad agency that specialized in movie posters.
Okay.
And while there, I met Matt Groening, and I also worked with an art director named Millie Smythe. And Millie and Matt were good friends. And then, everyone kind of went their separate ways after a few years. But then when The Simpsons started, I got a call from Millie. And by that time, I'd been doing the Disney stuff. And she knew that I was, familiar with working with animated characters. And she was looking for people to do merchandise art. So this was at the very beginning of The Simpsons. And there was about to be a wave of Simpsons stuff.
Yeah.
T-shirts, bedspreads, toys, video games, everything. And they needed people to draw that stuff, draw the packaging art, etc. So she asked me if I was interested in taking on some freelance work. And of course I was, and I was already a fan of the show. The show had only been on for about 3 weeks. And it had been on the Tracy Ullman show as shorts, but the half-hour show had only been going for about 3 weeks. But I had seen every episode. I loved it.
Nice.
She gave me like a quick primer on how to draw the characters, and then I was off and running. And I did, she gave me some freelance assignments. Fox really liked what I was doing, and so I kept getting more. Eventually, I was... one of the things people don't know about The Simpsons is that when Matt Groening made his deal with Fox, he retained all the publishing rights. So in addition to like the merchandise art that I was doing for Fox, I was doing stuff for all these publishing projects like Simpsons books, and there was a magazine. And it was in the magazine that we did the first comic strips.
Oh, okay.
So Simpsons Illustrated #1 had the first comic strip, which I drew. And then every issue after that, we sort of expanded the comic section until after 2 years, we decided to just do an issue of the magazine that was all comics.
Yeah.
And that was the first Simpsons comic. Do you want to stop because of that?
Oh, actually, it totally
is it all right?
By the mic.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
So that was the first Simpsons comic, and it wasn't, Bongo didn't exist yet.
Yep.
But it's what gave Matt Groening the confidence basically to start Bongo.
Okay, great. And we see a lot of your comics here, right? You did the Futurama, Simpsons, and there's also like the spin-offs, right? Where you got like the Radioactive Man and some others. For you, which was your favorite to work on?
Radioactive Man, definitely. Because growing up as a kid, I was a Batman fanatic. As I got a little bit older, I got into Spider-Man and the Marvel stuff. And all through my teen years and really in my early 20s, I wanted to be a comic artist and mainly a superhero guy.
Yeah.
And I ended up, because of fate and circumstances, I ended up getting into humor. Yeah. But I always still sort of harbored those dreams of drawing superheroes. So Radioactive Man was like the perfect compromise.
Sure.
Because I got to do great superhero stories, but they're hilarious as well.
Right. And was there like kind of more, this is how I'd imagine it, because like Radioactive Man was just kind of like this mini thing on Simpsons. It wasn't its own show.
Right.
Was there like more creative liberties you guys could take with it?
Yeah. Good question, by the way. That's exactly what happened, because when we were starting Bongo, obviously we're going to do a title called Simpsons Comics.
Yeah.
And then they had an episode of the show where Bart dressed up in costume to get into a comic convention for free. And so he called himself Bartman.
Who are you supposed to be?
I'm Bartman.
And so that was a natural, like to do a Bartman comic. Itchy and Scratchy was a natural, just an idea that made total sense to do an Itchy and Scratchy comic. And then Radioactive Man had existed on the show, but there was no secret identity. There was no gallery of villains.
Sure.
There was no girlfriend. There was a little bit of an origin story that we saw in the episode 3 Men in a Comic Book, but we only saw a few pages of that comic. And so when we did our Radioactive Man comic, we fleshed that out. So we gave him an origin. We gave him like a Lois Lane, a girlfriend who admires Radioactive Man but thinks his secret identity is a jerk.
Yeah.
And we gave him just a whole backstory, and we created a backstory for his sidekick, Fallout Boy, and then the villains. I think there was maybe one villain that was ever seen on the show in the early days before we did our comic. So we had to come up with more than that. So we had Dr. Crab and Lure Lass and Larceny Lass and a lot of lasses. So that was great. That was a lot of fun. And of all the stuff I've done for The Simpsons, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, because that was where visually and also in terms of writing that I got to contribute to the Simpsons universe.
Nice. And so speaking of the Simpsons universe, I know some people have different debates. Do you kind of feel like all Simpsons is kind of one like canon, like the show, the comic, games, they kind of all exist together, or different timelines?
Yeah, I can't really speak much for the games. I did a lot of the box art for the early games, but I didn't really like write the games or work on the stories that much. But I do know for the comic books, we tried to match the show as closely as possible. There are a few places where we veered off, like even in the first issue in Simpsons Comics #1, there's an experiment that turns Homer into a giant. And you wouldn't see that on a regular episode of the show, although you might see it on a Treehouse of Horror. So we do feel like the comics are canon, because like if whatever they would change on the show, like when Maude Flanders died, she died in the comic. We retired her. Anything that happens on the show, we would reflect that in the comic books.
Okay, great. And who's your favorite Simpsons character?
I have different favorites for different reasons. Writing wise, I love to write Homer. I think because I probably think more like Homer than any other character.
Sure.
Lisa's really tough. I don't like writing for Lisa because I have to study. I have to get out a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary, and she's just smarter than I am. So it's hard to write for somebody who's smarter than you are. But Homer's a lot of fun. I love drawing Radioactive Man, like I mentioned. And I love drawing the more kind of out there characters, like Sideshow Bob is one that I really enjoy drawing, just because the hair and the maniacal personality. He's just fun. Yeah. Because you can kind of go further with characters like that, like Krusty, Sideshow Bob, than you can with some of the other characters.
Sure, no doubt. And what do you think about the evolution of The Simpsons over the last, couple decades?
You mean visually or in terms
visually or story?
I think I really like if I was going to write a Simpsons story today, it would probably be more in tone like the first 10 years. So that's kind of like the era of The Simpsons where I think it was the best. Now I still think the show's really good. It has evolved. It's been influenced by other shows like Family Guy. And it's, it had to change with the times. But I love the episodes where, there's a lot of humor, but also there's a lot of heart. And you really understand the relationships between the characters, that even though Bart and Lisa are adversaries as siblings, they also love each other.
Sure.
And it's something that neither of them really want to admit, but they do admit it. So I love stories like that, and it seems like in more recent years they don't do stories like that as much, but every so often they do. And there was one. It was actually a 2-part episode that I think came out about a year or two ago, and I did a poster for it. They wanted a publicity poster, and it was called The Serious Flanders, and it was based on Fargo, the Netflix series.
Wow.
And it's a little bit like a Treehouse of Horror episode in that it's out of continuity because characters die in it that aren't really dead. But it's a great mystery. It's got a lot of heart. It's, it reminded me, like I told the writer-director, Matt Selman, after I had to view the episode to do the poster. And after I saw it, I said, Matt, if the show ever ends and you guys are able to start doing more movies, this is like the perfect model. Because it's a 2-parter, so it's only 45 minutes. It's not long enough to be a movie, so it's kind of a little mini movie. But I mean, I said you could do these year after year and just have a long string of Simpsons movies.
Love it.
And if they're as good as this, it'll go on forever.
Love it. And what are you up to these days?
Currently, actually working on a Simpsons style guide. Which, if people don't know what a style guide is, it's whenever you get Simpsons merchandise, the licensee who took out the license to produce that merchandise got a style guide from Fox, or now Disney. And it's basically a collection of ready-made images that they can put on their products.
Sure.
So I'm doing one for the Disney theme parks in Asia. So it's for the markets in Japan and China, and all the Asian markets.
Great.
So these will be images that you'll only find over there.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And if you got any kind of final message that you'd like to give to the audience, maybe inspiration, anyone who wants to become a illustrator or anything? Well,
I'm actually teaching school here in Detroit. I teach at my alma mater, which is the College for Creative Studies.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so that's where I went to school, and it's a thrill for me being back there and being able to basically share my experience and my knowledge with young artists coming up. So I love to do that. Any artists out there who want to get into comics or want to get into illustration, just follow your passion, do what you love. The best piece of advice I ever got was I showed my portfolio to an illustrator who I was a big fan of, and he was kind of flipping through it, and I could tell he was mostly unimpressed.
Yeah.
And he got to this one image that I did, this painting I did of the actress Lauren Bacall from the 40s and 50s, and he stopped on that, and he looked at me and he said, "You really had a good time painting this, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess, like any 20-something does." I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he goes, no. Like, I mean, of everything in your portfolio, this one made me stop. And because I can tell you put something into this that you didn't put into the others. He said, I can tell from the other images that you only put these in your portfolio because you thought it might get you a job. So you did an example of an album cover, an example of a movie poster. And there's some passion there, but not like this. And I had to stop and kind of think about it. I mean, I did this for my sister, and I did it really to impress, just not to impress myself, but to, just kind of have fun. I mean, I was just having fun doing it and sort of entertaining myself and trying to top myself, trying to be better than I am. And he said, okay, well, it shows. So he said, don't ignore the boring stuff, the stuff that you have to draw. If you hate drawing cars, if you hate drawing buildings, furniture, whatever, like as a comic artist, you got to draw all that stuff. Yeah. You have to draw the interior of Peter Parker's apartment. Yeah. And you have to draw, Wayne Enterprises, and every panel isn't Batman punching the Joker. Sure. So you're going to have to learn to draw that stuff. So don't ignore it. But he said, as often as possible, draw to entertain yourself, because he says that's where you're going to get good, because you don't feel like you're practicing. You don't feel like you're working. You feel like you're just having fun. It's just playtime. And when you're doing that, you're going to get better and better and not realize it.
Awesome. I love it. Well, guys, that's Bill Morrison, artist behind The Simpsons, Futurama, some of the Disney posters.
Beatles, Yellow Submarine. I don't know. I'm not going to give you my resume.
Okay, sounds good, man. I really appreciate the interview. All of his links and stuff will be down in the description below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it. Yep.